Okay, so let's start again. So I'm Jérémy Zarka, a member of the core team of Blockchain HEC. So the Blockchain HEC was created in 2017 with the aim of connecting the ecosystem and sharing knowledge around the Web3, the blockchain, the cryptocurrencies, DeFi, and to share the knowledge around that area. So tonight I will be co-moderating this Ask Me Anything with Paul Frabot. So we'll be co-moderating with Nicolas Decouter, who is in charge of the UK chapter of Blockchain HEC and also a big fan of DeFi. On behalf of Blockchain HEC, I would like to thank our prime sponsor, PwC, Stake Capital Group, and our partners, HEC Alumni, HEC Paris, and all 80 speakers, startups, and other corp that have contributed to sharing their lights on the Web3 universe. I remind you that at Blockchain HEC, we organize 2 events per week, and the next one will be later this week on the topic of VC in Web3 and will be moderated by Eric Olombel. So today we are very excited to welcome Paul Frabot, co-founder and CEO of Morpho Labs. That's a huge funding in the past, the biggest funding of student-led project, and now that has turned into a great DeFi protocol. Paul, hello. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you. So hi, everyone. We had some microphone issues, but now we're all good. So yeah, I'm Paul Frabot, CEO and co-founder of Morpho Labs, which is the software development company working on Morpho. Morpho being a decentralized finance application enabling the lending and the borrowing of crypto assets with optimal capital efficiency. So the idea is that most of you, I assume, are aware about cryptocurrencies, basically transferring value without the need of an intermediary, while Morpho is about making loans without intermediaries, basically. So this is not a new concept. First protocols doing the similar things appeared in 2018. The difference is that Morpho is doing it in a very, very optimized fashion. And so really, Morpho is going to be a protocol that is plugged on top of existing lending protocols. So you may be familiar with Aave or Compound, that are lending protocols hosting billions in loans of volume. Yes, in loans volume. And Morpho is a protocol that is on top of those protocols. So as a user of Aave, for example, you'll be better off using Morpho Aave on a protocol like Compound. You have Morpho Compound that is better than Compound, etc., etc. So I just saw the question: does it work with Lido as well? Well, it's really exclusive to lending protocols. Lido is a liquid staking platform, so it enables you to stake ETH without having the infrastructure. So this is not working with Lido. It's only working with lending protocols such as Compound or Aave, for example. So yeah, so that's basically what we do. We've been working on it for a year and a half now, and a year ago we co-founded Morpho Labs and raised our first round of funding of $1 million back when we were students in Telecom Paris. And recently we announced a second fundraising of $20 million, also during our last year of studies. And yeah, and now we're a team of 13, and the protocol was launched 2 months ago. It's welcoming 150 million of loans overall, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So I don't know, Jeremy, do you want me to do a more complete introduction about the protocol, or is it fine for now? Oh, and I just saw the question: how many protocols are integrated already? For now, Morpho works on the biggest protocols. So you have Aave, so Morpho Aave for Aave, Morpho Compound for Compound. And yeah, those are the 2 biggest ones.
Maybe it's a nice segue to address the product aspect of the conference. We have many different questions covering different aspects of your project, including the team, obviously, and also how concretely you can implement a DeFi protocol. But coming back to the product, you just mentioned that it is on top of existing protocols. So can you tell us what is really the pain point that you are trying to solve if you are proposing something which is coming on top of these really well-known and already successful DeFi protocols? Yeah, you need to be unmuted. I think we'll keep you unmuted for.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. Okay, I just have the the reflex of muting myself all the time, but I won't anymore. But yeah, so the idea is that when you go to Compound or Aave protocol to lend and borrow crypto assets, you'll notice that there is a huge spread between the lending APY and the borrowing APY. So it's a very low APY to lend and a very high APY to borrow. So let's say you're going to lend your money at 0.5% and you're going to borrow the same assets at 3%. And so the idea is that Morpho is addressing this very spread. It's not a spread where Aave is taking a fee. It's a spread where Aave is too inefficient to actually fill it. So the idea is that the mechanism by which Aave is working is the following. You have many lenders, very few borrowers, and lenders are going to share the interests generated by the few borrowers. So it means that one borrower paying 3% is going to share. So the lenders are going to share this 3%. So 3 lenders will earn each 1% if you have 1 borrower and 3 lenders. So this is where the spread comes from. And so Morpho in all this is providing, so you have the 1% to lend, 3% to borrow. Morpho is providing the 2% in the middle. So it's better for lenders, better for borrowers. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. And is it the same issue that Compound has, or do you see that difference between Aave and Compound?
Yeah, I promise I won't mute myself anymore. But yeah, so the idea is that it's really the same mechanism. So Compound back in the day invented the lending pool mechanism. And they realized that in order for it to work, you need to have a lot of liquidity available in the protocol. And in order to do that, they are going to have very high borrowing interest rates. And it's a feature of Compound and Aave to have this spread. And I see the question, why is not Aave optimizing it? And the answer to that is it's a feature of their protocol to have such a spread in order to remain fully liquid. Because it's a very high interest rate to borrow and a very low interest rate to lend, you have an excess of lenders. And this is on purpose in order for anyone to leave the market at any time or for any borrowers to join the market at any time. So Aave and Compound both have a very cool feature, which is liquidity, having a ton of idle liquidity in their smart contract that is not borrowed. This is creating an inefficiency, okay? But the cool point about it is that you can withdraw at any time. And Morpho uses this liquidity, but on top is providing a peer-to-peer matching engine that is going to match users peer-to-peer and increase the efficiency of the loans. But this is not something Aave itself can do.
So can you tell us about the withdrawal condition then on Morpho? Are they pari passu with Aave and Compound?
Yes, so that's the interesting part. So, and I see also the question from Frédéric saying, hey, so Morpho is taking more risk. And so this is where things get interesting. You have 3 different risks in lending. You have the biggest one being the illiquidity risk. And this is exactly the question, which is, I'm supplying ETH on Compound. Well, if I want to withdraw, most of the time I can, and instantly, and I can withdraw even hundreds of millions. So that's very convenient. So that's the first thing. Now, on Morpho, if I lend some money, well, you could say people are going to borrow it, and it's going to be a peer-to-peer match. So it's going to increase my rates. But on the other hand, what's going to happen is that I won't be able to withdraw because all my liquidity is being lent out. But that's not the case. And what actually happens is that Morpho is going to piggyback the lending pool liquidity. and is going to be able to withdraw with the liquidity of the pool the money of the lender. I can go more into the details of that if necessary, but it would take a little bit more time. So I'll just do it if people ask for it. And so coming back to the question of the risk that is asked in the chat, the system as a whole, Morpho plus Aave, is not generating more yield. It's just that Morpho users are having a more important share of the cake. So it means that you don't have additional risk by using Morpho from an illiquidity and Oracle perspective. Morpho has the same collateral factors, the same oracles, the same liquidation parameters, and also the same liquidity properties as the underlying pool. And it has higher APY. And the reason why it's so is because Aave itself is going to have lower APYs because of Morpho. So it does not entail to have bigger risk. I hope this is clear, Frederic, but I can elaborate more if needed a bit later.
In that case, Paul, are you competitor to Aave? Are you, let's say, working in symbiosis with them? What is the forward journey for Morpho?
So it's a very good question. Actually, it's a very hard one to answer because in some way you could say Morpho is parasitic to the lending pool because any user using Aave have interest in moving to Morpho Aave directly. Like it's the exact same product, really, but it has better rates. So to that sense, you could say it's parasitic because everybody is going to move from Aave to Morpho Aave because it makes a ton of sense. But on the other hand, if everybody starts doing that in the long term, it may have, such a big impact on Aave. We're quite far away from that, but let's imagine that Morpho is now onboarding the 10 billions that are available on Aave. You could potentially argue that this is going to create a systemic risk for DeFi. But here, in that scenario, I'm sure the markets or the protocols themselves will find a middle ground in order to mitigate that risk. So it's the idea that as a user, I have a direct incentive in joining Morpho, and I will always have an incentive in joining Morpho compared to Aave. But in the long term, if Aave is completely deserted, then you can have more important illiquidity risk for Aave and for Morpho. And so the market has to find some sort of sweet spot or middle ground for this to remain right, if I may.
And so on the topic of scaling, because you say that you can potentially address the whole liquidity that is available on Compound and Aave, how can you scale your order book model that is matching, lenders and borrowers? Are there technical issues that you have to tackle, or is it will it scale smoothly up to that amount of liquidity?
Yes. So the idea is the following. So back in 2018, people tried peer-to-peer lending approaches, so basically a book of offers. It did not scale for two reasons: liquidity and gas. So firstly, reason liquidity is the following. So you want to borrow money, you want to borrow 1 billion, and there is just not 1 billion available. And if you want to withdraw your money in a peer-to-peer system, well, you can't because your money is being borrowed by someone else, right? So this is not possible. And yeah, so that's the first problem. Yeah, so it's a peer-to-peer approach is very difficult to scale in terms of liquidity. Now, in terms of gas, you have the intuition that if I want to borrow 1 billion, I'm going to, take the liquidity from one user that has, like, let's say $100, then the second, then the third, then the fourth, etc. So it's potentially infinite consumption in gas. And so Morpho was about solving both of those problems with, I would not say one concept, but at least one very common concept. So the idea is to fall back on the lending pool as follows. So Morpho is going to start matching people as much as it can And if it is forced to stop because of gas or liquidity, it's going to fall back on the underlying pool. So I give you an example. I want to borrow 1 billion, and I can only do, let's say, 10 matches before running out of gas. So I'm going to match the 10 first, and if my order is not completely filled, then I'll do the rest on the lending pool. At a lower rate, for sure, at a less interesting rate, for sure, but still I will be able to terminate my execution. And it's the same for liquidity. If I don't find enough liquidity in peer-to-peer, I can find the rest on the lending pool. So Morpho is about, having a hybrid model where we start with an order book, and in order to scale infinitely, if we don't succeed in finishing, then we do the rest on the lending pool.
Okay, so what are the main challenges that you anticipate for the users of Aave or Compound to join the Morpho? Or are you saying maybe not a marketing buzzword that it's a no-brainer? What can you say about the main challenges?
I think it's more of an educational problem. To be honest, Morpho is a no-brainer, and we mathematically proved it in a 70 pages long yellow paper that is formally proving the protocol of Morpho, and also formally proving the different properties of the protocol compared to Compound. So Morpho has the same liquidity of Compound, the same liquidation parameters of Compound, oracles, collateral factors, etc., but has better rates. So it is a no-brainer from a user perspective. But the thing is, it's not because it's a no-brainer that people are going to trust it right away. So basically our job is to explain to people what it's about, because it's a very complex mechanism compared to existing DeFi protocols. So that's the first thing. And then second thing is that we have additional code, and additional code means additional smart contract risk. And this should be taken into account as well. This is why we've done so many audits, but in any case, it does not matter if we did 12 audits, which we did, which is probably the biggest amount of audits done in 2022 for DeFi protocols, for a DeFi protocol. But still, we have to remain very careful about this risk as well. So I would say those are the two limits: education and smart contract risk.
Does it mean that you expect that the first user will be like more educated or even institutional clients rather than retail? Or
no, I think it's going to be DeFi native using Aave and Compound, and that just understood that Morpho is better. And this is what we see already. Like people are moving from Compound to Morpho Compound, or moving from Aave to Morpho Aave already.
There was a question in the chat about the ecosystem that you're doing this DeFi protocol. Is it on Ethereum, or are you using any other?
Yes, it's on Ethereum at the moment.
And do you plan on extending to layer 2 EVMs, and potentially other ecosystems like Tezos? Or
so for now, we don't have plans in moving into non-EVM compatible stuff, but for the EVM compatible stuff, we're talking to every single layer 2 or other layer 1 that is EVM compatible.
Very cool. Jeremy, should we go to the second question maybe?
Yeah, definitely. So the second section is about how does it work at Morpho, and so can you talk a bit about the founding team? How did you meet, and what are your complementarities? How does it fit together, and what you are looking for, in terms of talents and people to join your team?
Yep. So Morpho is a research-based project initially. So I was a student at Polytechnique back then, and I was in many DeFi research groups. And so it was back in 2021, we were modeling lending protocols from a theoretical point of view. And from there came out the very first ideas around Morpho. So in August, I co-founded Morpho Labs in order to develop the protocol. And so that meant basically finding 3 co-founders. So one that would be in charge of research and development. The second would be in charge of solidity. So basically implementing the protocol. And the third one would be about implementing whatever is off-chain. So whatever is, from our eyes and the user interface and connect it to the blockchain itself. So it's a very complementary yet very technical initial core team. So together we had the whole stack, of a lending protocol. Research, where you basically design mechanism, formalize them and prove them. Solidity, where you implement the pseudocode of the research team, you test it, you securize it, and then the DApp team that is going to take the data from the blockchain, format it, and display it to the eyes of the user. With, of course, we have a designer now, but yeah, that was the initial thoughts on the Morpho core team. And so, yeah, we met together from school. So actually not from school. So we were all in the Plateau de Saclay. So it's a famous place in France where you have all the main universities. And so I did not know them at first, but I went for them. So I looked for the most talented people in Plateau de Saclay and ended up finding 3 different persons that were very talented in Web3 and had a strong knowledge in DeFi as well. And from there, we co-founded Morpho Labs. We did the first round of funding during our second year, and yeah, then a third one, but second round, but we'll have the time to discuss it, I'm sure.
Super interesting. So on top of the complementarity that you highlighted, so what do you think are the strengths of that team, and what does it take, to go as fast as you did? That route?
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so basically we have a very, very high shipping pace. And the reason for that is that we sleep very little and we work a lot. But I would say there is no, we don't brag so much about being very fast, because it can be very dangerous to go fast in DeFi. You have to privilege security first in every single scenario, because there is no banks, there is no insurance, there is no anything of that. It's just the algorithm, right? And if there is a bug in the algorithm, then it's all finished. So that's why we spend so much money into security, into audits and everything. But I would say that the biggest strength of the protocol, of the team, is that it's deeply technical and it understands DeFi way better than many other teams, in my opinion, in the space. And also it has a deep academic background. So we do things very seriously. We prove everything we do. We don't just do it and, proofread everything. We actually model our code mathematically. We prove mathematically that our code is correct. And only then we implement it. So we have a pseudocode that is formally proven even before, coding it. And then we code it. We do a lot of testing, obviously classical testing, fuzz testing and everything, for automatic formal proving as well. So I see the question about the testing tools that we use. We use Sartora for automated formal proving. We use Slither for fuzzing, and Foundry as well. Yeah, and then you have a lot of auditors that are very good out there. So we've been using the top tier audits firms in the space. We use the Immunify bounty system as well. We have more than $500K in bounty over there. And what else? We do front-end audits as well, because it's important. I don't think there's anything we've thought of that we did not do, but yeah, that's basically, I would say that security is more important than the pace, but yes, so coming back to the strengths of the team is that it's deeply technical and has the rigorous academic background, which is so important for DeFi.
And so there's another question that we did not address. The question is, did you have the opportunity to discuss with Aave about your protocol? And what does it take to bring a protocol like this, and within the surrounding ecosystem, Compound and Aave mainly?
Yeah, sure. So I've been in touch with Mark Zoller a lot of time. By the way, I did a Twitter space with him yesterday. So he sees the Morpho protocol as a very symbiotic relation with Aave, which is not something I would always agree on. It depends on the assumption that you make. in the end, I think that Morpho is a very neutral protocol. It's not made to be adversary or friendly with Aave. It's made to be the best for the user. Okay, whatever is the impact on Aave. So I try to remain as neutral as I can, even though I like Mark Deller. I like the Aave team a lot. I'm a big fan of Compound as well. But it's my job to remain very neutral and say, hey, we're doing whatever is best for the end user, without any emotional consideration with the underlying pool. But we're very cool with the team and is aware of the concepts. I think the Aave team has been working a lot into understanding Morpho lately. And yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
So in terms of, so you said that you're not targeting the retail investors nor institutional investors. You take whatever is available on Compound and Aave, and they should naturally come to you. Are you still investigating on selling your protocol to investors that may be somewhere else than crypto at the moment?
Really, at the moment, no. It's really a DeFi-focused product on the first place. DeFi is big, sufficiently big in order to attract billions in liquidity. Morpho is currently 150 million, but we're looking to grow at multiple billions in the short term. And this requires only DeFi users, and it's best suited for DeFi users. So it's a complex. Compound and Aave is more complex than it seems. There is a lot of risk and everything. It's very hard to take it to the next level of retail users and everything. So this is what they're trying to do at the moment. But there are two reasons why it's complex. The first one is that the protocol itself is not competitive with traditional finance. You don't have better rates. It's just lower rates and like less interesting APY compared to traditional finance or treasury bonds and everything. And second reason is that it's not such a trivial thing to interact with Aave. You have operational risk. You have to have your own wallet, your own crypto and everything. You have gas costs as well. So it's really not so easy. And so I think the main focus should be in the following order. First, DeFi native. So it means DAOs that want to do treasury management or DeFi power users that are already using Compound or Aave and that want to switch to Morpho. Second focus would be more experimented users or more, institutional that are, they want to have better, more important. Yep, sorry about that. So the idea is that we're more looking at traditional finance people that would be looking into DeFi because it's providing better APY and not just because it's decentralized, but also because it's efficient. And one of the reasons it's going to be more efficient is the following. So if you look at traditional finance, you have 44,000 different banks and credit unions out there, and they all do the same thing, right? They all have the same algorithms internally that they each develop separately. So let's say 50,000 banks are each developing one lending algorithm. They all have their building, their marketing team, their development team and everything. While they all do the same thing. And a DeFi protocol is only one financial primitive for one algorithm. And this itself is very powerful because you have a cost reduction in DeFi that is 50K times cheaper in terms of development costs than traditional finance. And you can consider this, but you also consider the fact that you don't have infrastructure costs because it's provided by Ethereum, and you don't have as much a need for a building, for example, for a DeFi protocol. So overall, DeFi is very cheap. Theoretically, it should be much cheaper, but it's because the algorithms themselves are not efficient enough that it's not attractive. But once you have algorithms that are as efficient in DeFi as in traditional finance, then the cost reduction that DeFi enables will be much more sensible. And then people will try to, will move from traditional finance to decentralized finance because it's much cheaper and much more efficient.
Paul, sorry if I coming back to the product side angle, but as we are discussing about the comparison between Aave and your protocol, so I have two questions. So you mentioned that it's really based on the same let's say a stack or some Oracle liquidation principles. But in terms of really the product and features, you offer the same, for instance, range of currencies that users can borrow or lend. One dimension. The other dimension is we know about actually the real world assets and that Aave can actually help users to leverage off to get, for instance, loans thanks to their partnership with Centrifuge, for instance. Is it something as well that you are trying to mimic? So otherwise said, are you trying to be the Aave plus the additional layer on top of it, or are you also trying to implement your own product suite, whether or not it matches completely Aave? It's not really your main concern.
Yep, absolutely. So the idea is the following. So Aave has been working on a main product that is the Aave protocol, providing liquidity for users. And then they've been expanding horizontally to other products like realty, centrifuge, enabling leverage on real world assets, for example. And in my humble personal opinion, I think that was way too soon to scale to other products, considering that Aave itself is very inefficient. And so our job as Morpho Labs is to show first that current main DeFi protocols are not relevant enough, I would say. So Aave is not efficient enough, Compound is not efficient enough, and that we can do better. And this is basically what we proved by building Morpho. And then Morpho is about improving this very specific and concentrated subject, which is lending. And we're not expanding any soon to other primitives or other, features that you could have with real world assets and everything, because the core thing in itself is not done properly, again, in my opinion. So really for us, secured lending, it's multiple trillions market, so it's huge in traditional finance. And so there is no need to scale horizontally with other products if the core product in itself is not here yet.
So maybe let's move to the other part that is trying to focus on the protocol and on the genesis of the protocol. So I mean, I think the audience may be quite interested in hearing your thoughts on, okay, so I have an idea in DeFi. How do we implement a DeFi protocol? So you already alluded to the different stats that you need, but really, what is the journey to develop a DeFi protocol?
No, that's, yeah, I really, but anyway, so the different step would be first understand very well what's happening in the DeFi space, because it's very easy to do nonsense DeFi protocols, to be honest. And once you understand Uniswap, Uniswap V3, Aave, Maker, all those major DeFi protocols, I would suggest anyone that is trying to build in the Web3 space to get down to the technical details, because in the end, what you're going to build is code. And even the organization of the protocol you're going to build, so the DAO is going to be code. Everything is code in Web3. So whether it's the treasury, it's going to be about code. Whether it's about the product, it's going to be about code and everything. So you really have to get down the weeds of DeFi before starting anything. You have to understand the thing. And I don't think, even from a CEO perspective, you have to be able to understand this perfectly in order to make strategic decisions. You don't need to know how to code, but you really need to be able to go very deep in the stack. So that would be my first point. And then from there, once you have, it's all about mechanism design. So you devise an implementation of a mechanism that you think that is right, and that makes sense, and that brings value to the space. And I think from there, you can start writing a white paper and say, hey, a white paper is very appreciated by investors in particular. So if you read, you explain your vision, you explain the pain points that you saw in DeFi, you write this white paper that is, bringing the solution to the problem you mentioned. And from there, you can directly seek investors. I suggest seeking investors before building the entire protocol. And one of the reasons is you should not release a protocol that is not audited by a good audit company. And auditing your code is at least 100K. So you need to raise funds, except you want to put your own money in it. But I would advise to get investors for this at least, but also to have, advice and get connected in the Web3 DeFi space in general. It's very important. So I would say first, deep exploration of DeFi. Second, find your thing, your added value, and or the pain points you want to address, and redact a white paper, and then look for investors. And from there, build a very strong technical team as well, because managing a DeFi protocol operationally is no easy task. And it's tiring because you have a lot of things to be aware about, and every single misclick, every single line of code that is not right, it can lose you hundreds of millions of dollars. And this is the case with Morpho at the moment. We are very, very careful, and it's a lot of pressure as well. So be prepared, because obviously, again, you don't have insurances and everything. It's just the user and the code, and you don't want to mess it up, obviously. That's just, my experience. There are probably various ways you can do a DeFi protocol, but that's from my experience, the way I did it.
Yeah, very useful. Thank you.
It's super interesting. Can you tell us a bit about your fundraising? Because I think what we discussed preparing for that webinar is that you achieved the largest student-led fundraising campaign. That's super exciting. So can you tell us a bit about the ups, the downs, how did you shape that? How did you execute?
Yeah, sure. So really, I don't know. It just went this way. It's like first round, I wanted to keep it as small as possible because we're still at school. We're still having 35 hours of lessons every week, and I didn't want to mess up hundreds of. I didn't want to mess up few $1 million in the project that I would not care about. So really wanted to keep it small in order that I do not waste any money. And then, so that was in August last year. And then in January this year, I felt that crypto winter was coming. If you were inside, the different groups and everything, you could see that people were not as comfortable as they used to be. And I just felt that it was the right time to secure a fundraising. And also, I wanted to be able to provide the optimal security for Morpho. So security is very expensive, so I wanted to raise a bunch. And because we had raised $1 million, and we've proven our existing investors that we were able to ship very fast while being at school. I remember when investors saying, "Hey, you guys are still at school. What happens the day you're not at school anymore? You're going to ship like twice fast as you're already done." And so I think that somehow it helped. I don't know. So our early investors were very, very convinced, and they were our main, I would say, advocates when it came to do the second fundraising. So they introduced us to the big ones, and they said, "Hey, those guys are amazing. You should definitely look into it." And they were the ones, doubling down on their investment and everything. So I also did a bunch of calls. I have done, I think, more than 250 different calls for this fundraising. So the second one, it lasts like 8 or 9 weeks. And it was very long, but I mean, some fundraising are much longer than that. But to me, it felt like very long. But I took the time to talk to a lot of people to be very, very connected. But I never reached out to investors directly. They all reached out to me, or I always had introduction. I think it's quite important, in order to create interest in the protocols that you you never ask for it. You just wait for people to come. And yeah, what else can I say? We started in Europe, the fundraising, and Europe was not so. Actually, European investors, except for the 2 free crypto natives that we have in the rounds, they did not understand Morpho, so they did not invest. So that's the main reason why. And then US funds came in and said, hey, we are interested, we understood and everything. And they almost tripled the offers that we had in Europe. So it was quite a no-brainer for us to move there. And this is how we ended up having multiple term sheets from US firms. And the 2 most important ones, so I would say not the 2 biggest, but the 2 most interesting ones came out to be Andreessen Horowitz and Variant. And yep, that's basically how it ended up. I'm sorry, there is no like secret sauce and everything. It went pretty smoothly, to be honest. But yeah, I would say the key here was early investors that really helped a lot in making an introduction and supporting us along the way.
Super interesting. And so for the next rounds, potentially there will be next rounds. Are you looking for the similar type of investors, or will it be crypto native investors, or are you looking for
So to be honest, for now it's a bit too early to say. We're in touch with every big investor in the world, whether it's like all the big names, but like Andreessen Horowitz is obviously one of the biggest one in the world. So, but we're in touch with everybody. For now, we're not looking at funds, so we've not devised any strategy on everything. But we have like timelines and plans in our head, but it's very blurry at the moment, and it's more focused on product at the moment than fundraising. Obviously, we raised 20 million. We're still only 13 in the team. So it's pretty small team for the amount we've raised. And by the way, we're recruiting a bunch of people. So if you guys are interested, we're looking at marketing content marketing managers. We're looking at researchers, math people, computing people, like full stack engineers, like a bunch of different profiles. But before everything, we're looking at talents and human beings. So it does not matter if you don't fit in the job description, just if you're interested in joining, and if there is a human fit, then there could be interest. When ICO, there is no plan for an ICO because we don't need funds. However, tokens are already being transferred to users through liquidity mining programs as non-transferable tokens. And one day it can happen that the transferability for those tokens is enabled, in which case a market can from itself, can be born from this, but there is no specific public sale that is planned at the moment.
Yeah. Paul, I had a question about the token. Obviously, does it mean that the only way to get a token is to go on the protocol, right?
Yeah. So basically, the only way to get tokens is either to work for Morpho, to be an investor in Morpho, or to use Morpho, which makes a ton of sense because from a decentralized organization perspective, you want the protocol to be led by those three different kind of persona. People bootstrapping growth through investment, people building the thing, and people using it. And yep.
Super inspiring discussion. So it's 10 to 7. What do you guys have other questions maybe in the audience? Eric, don't hesitate. Ludovic, Robin. And otherwise, I have maybe one last question on my side. So you said you are hiring. So that's a way to spend your money. Then the question is, my question is, what else will you invest your funds to develop the protocol? You talked about auditing, you talked about marketing, math, research. What else can be there to help you to grow?
Yeah. Just before I answer that, I just saw that Robin has a question, I think. So I'll answer the question and then we answer to Robin's question right after. But the idea is that we spend a lot of money in security, like a lot. Really, it's our first expenses are security. So that's the first thing. And then we have obviously a lot of hiring at the moment. And then so looking, yeah. So we have security and hiring at the moment, and yeah, that's basically the main things.
That's it.
But security is a huge piece. Like, you know, you can imagine, it's just, if you want to do it right and you raise only like 5 million, you can't do it. Like, it's impossible. It's really if you want to do it right, and you have, like, if you raise just a seed round, you'll be forced to do some trade-offs, which is not something we're looking to do.
And you can't really compromise on security, right? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Obviously, Paul, when you are mentioning security, that it's at the smart contract level, or is it really down to the?
So at different layers. So so you have obviously the protocol in itself. So the smart contract can be right, but the protocol can have errors. So in the mechanism design in itself, and it can break because of that, for economic reasons, for example, but also purely mechanism design reasons. So you have to formally prove your protocol, and people can say sometimes that is useless, but because it's very hard to do. And this is the main reason people say it's useless, because it's very, very expensive and very hard to do. But it is not, and a lot of bugs are found through formal proving. Then you have smart contract audits, obviously. Protocols that have a big code base like Morpho, you have to audit them, and an audit nowadays is at least 300K per audit if you want to audit the protocols correctly. And then you have recurrent audits, because auditing your protocol one time is right, but every time you do a change in the code base, which is protocols do without even noticing the community, they do it without auditing the code. But you have to audit the code every time you do a big change. So that's it. And then so you have the economic modeling of your protocol and the risk assessment. So to do that, you have to, like Aave, for example, pay, I think it was 10 million a year gauntlets to just do agent modeling on their protocol with gauntlets, which is very, very expensive in itself. Then you have bounties. We are looking to increase our bounty to 1 million now. And it's really, you know, it's either that or you end up getting wrecked in a hack. Like just today was a 160 million hack again. So yeah, it's again, maybe I'm a bit too much, you know, into security, but I think it's key, especially in Morpho, where the only barrier to entry from a risk perspective is smart contract risk. And so this is why we emphasize that so much. But I would advise anyone to do it the same anyway. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Paul. And before Robin takes the lead on his questions, so for whoever wants to know more about actually Morpho, so you mentioned like a yellow paper. Is it correct? Is it available on your website?
The yellow paper. So yes, no, the yellow paper is not released yet, and unfortunately. But it's under review. It's 70 pages long. It's quite but we're looking to do an academic release, and we're very proud of it. So it's actually the thing that I'm the most proud of in the whole protocol. But it will be released, I would hope, in the next weeks, if not sooner, but prefer saying weeks.
Very good. Thank you.
But you can still check the white paper. whitepaper.morpho.xyz. No, that's my bad.
Bonsoir, Jérémy, Nicolas, et Paul. I have a question for Paul. So I would like to know, on a business model perspective, how do you see the open source nature of DeFi and Morpho? And how do you see this open source nature has influenced the way you create value as an entrepreneur for the project and for its users?
Great. So I think it's an excellent question, and a question that people should ask much more. To me, it's the business model of DeFi is completely a game changer, and two, not understood at all. So here is my personal opinion on it. Morpho Labs is not operating a financial service. It is not, we don't have finance background in the first place. We're just math people and computer scientists working on developing Morpho. And Morpho Labs is different from Morpho. Morpho is the algorithm, and it's operating the financial service on the Ethereum blockchain, and it's providing efficient. So the goal of the algorithm is to provide lending services to everybody, and it's a non-lucrative aim. Okay, it's important to understand that Morpho does not want to make money. It wants lending services to be as efficient as possible for anyone and accessible to anyone. But Morpho wants its algorithm to evolve and remain state of the art. And to do so, Morpho is going to accumulate a fee that is here to pay contributors. So Morpho in the code is extracting a little bit of value and putting it into a treasury. And then it's going to pay contributors. And Morpho Labs is one of the contributors. So you had the idea that in the past, traditional finance was here and was paid to operate a financial service. And now DeFi companies like Morpho Labs are paid to improve a common good, right? Basically, Morpho Labs has one client, and it's Morpho itself. And we're paid by Morpho to improve Morpho, which is amazing because Morpho is accessible to everybody. And we're not paid on something that we have or a property we have. We're paid because we improve the service. And to me, that's a much more interesting and much more incentives aligned business model with the end user. And traditional finance has often been criticized a lot by its business model, basically. And, it's not very, I would say, it does not have the best reputation, traditional finance. But in DeFi, things are different. You can have everything open source, everything open. You get paid because you improve what is open source. So that's a personal take. Again, some people think different on this subject, but I'm pretty convinced by this approach. Anyway.
Merci, Paul.
There is one question left unanswered. Maybe I can take that one very quickly.
There's one question from Frederic. Yeah, I think. So Frederic, if you want to ask your question.
Thank you. First, thank you very much, Paul and the team. I'm very impressed by the quality of the presentation today. Really, you are so young, and I'm very impressed. So congratulations. Yeah, I have one question in the chat that I think was left unanswered, but maybe you can read and answer. But the last one I had is, when I see your tool and the power, the quantity of money that potentially you're going to manipulate, or your tool is going to manipulate, I was wondering if you are sleeping well during the night.
So it's a good question, and I think there is it's actually a serious one, because I have a lot of DeFi founders friends that went bad in the sense that they're going through therapy and everything because they have billions on their smart contracts. I can't give names, but that's a reality. And it's the way you have to think of it. And the solution to this problem is rigorous approach first, and also decentralization. The protocol does not rely on I or on Morpho Labs. In the long term, it should rely on everybody from the community, and every decision should be taken very, very carefully, and take the time that is needed. And this is why I said in the beginning that we should not brag about being fast. We should take the time for everything, and whenever a bad decision is taken, then it's not your fault personally. It's the fault of, it's probably the idea that you could not have done better in every way. And for example, if something happens to Ethereum tomorrow, nobody will blame Vitalik Buterin, right? And I think Vitalik in the beginning was a very important piece to the Ethereum community and the Ethereum tech. But in the long run, as the protocol decentralizes, it less and less depends on him. So yeah, that would be my take on the do I sleep well? But at the moment, sometimes I must say that it's a bit complicated. But in the long term, it is going to be better. And then to answer the question, so Morpho is a gateway to Aave. So instead of using Aave directly, you use Morpho Aave, and you're going to get an optimized experience. But in order to do so, you have to withdraw from Aave and then go back to Morpho. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay.
I think we have reached the 1 hour limit. So I had many questions about this decentralization as well that you mentioned, Paul. I mean, how decentralized it really is the day as you are starting a project. I mean, from experience, you may start with a more centralized than what aspirationally you are hoping for. But maybe we can take that to another discussions. All right. So I just wanted to extend this big thank for you, Paul. You know, indeed you are quite young, but you know, I think what we take as a lesson is like all the journey that you have already accomplished, and more importantly, the future lying ahead of you and the team. So what we take as a lesson as well is that you are hiring. So that's really important. I mean, maybe a technical profile is important, but you mentioned like the profile and the interest in the project. And why also we can take as a lesson is that compared to the heavy compounds, there's a, let's say, a not really aggressive stance and more neutral stance that you want to promote. But the future will tell, you know, how the two business could coexist. But I guess what we hope for is obviously successful for your protocol. I don't know, Jerry, if you want to add anything, but I just wanted also to thank the audience. You feel that we are really in intimate mode with not a lot of people, but the good thing and bad thing of having a replay is that people have the luxury to come back to it. Actually, I tend to say that the luxury for us is to interact with you, Paul. So thanks again for that. Yeah. Jerry, do you want to add anything?
No, just a big thank you from Blockchain HEC or the sponsors, and thank you a lot, Paul, for being with us tonight. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and don't hesitate to reach out to me if you have any question, or if you are interested in any of the jobs, or if you know someone that could be interested. Again, we're hiring a lot, and yeah. Okay, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.